13 points. Dublin suffered their first defeat of the league in 2023. Dublin leading by 5 points at half-time, looking good, looking comfortable. I was doing a watch-along of the game and obviously the reaction after the game as well. Things were looking rosy in the garden, and then things came crashing back down to reality very, very fast. And I suppose I tweeted out saying that game showed everything that's great about Dublin, that they clearly still have the talent levels and the ability. But then in the second half, when the going got tough, we folded. And I think Derry were good, but I don't even think they were brilliant. I think shooting wise, they left it behind them. And I think they would even look at this game and think they could have played better. So yeah, from a Dublin perspective, not good enough.
I just imagine, like, if Kieran Kilkenny took that goal chance, we'd be sitting here and talking about Dublin's redemption arc, you know? So, like, it does swing around the roundabouts. Like, it looked the right decision at the time from Kieran Kilkenny, but looking in hindsight, maybe he should have passed it off. Maybe, you know, it was a huge opportunity missed, and Derry, they performed. They definitely brought the decibels up a notch in the second half. They definitely did, and it definitely translated onto the pitch. But when you look at the scoring at halftime, especially 7-2, you would have thought Dublin have this in the bag. And then what happened in the second half, I don't know. It wasn't necessarily, I don't think, a complete capitulation. Like, a capitulation was Dublin against Mayo. I don't think this was a capitulation, in all honesty. Like, I forget, Derry only took the lead for the first time. What was it, the 65th minute? 60, maybe even later than that. So, like, I don't think it was that quite bad as people make it out to be. But yeah, it was like the first half. I thought Dublin were excellent. Brian Fenton was dominating proceedings in the middle. Conor O'Callaghan wasn't in the game particularly, but he still scored a point. Cormac Costello did pretty well up front. They had their defensive structure pretty well organised as well. Like, Derry were poor shooting, but Dublin still had their defensive organisation in the first half pretty top notch. But I think the main turning point was the goal for Derry. And again, we talked about this for Dublin and Cork a few weeks ago. It was so easy for them to go through that defence, you know, for Cork to go through the Dublin defence, and it seemed that way last night for Noel Turner's goal. It was brilliantly worked from Derry, but I'd be questioning the Dublin defence there. Like, you left so much space there, and it ended up in the back of the net. And even look at the stats now. Scores from play, actually, Dublin scored 12 points from play out of the possible 13. So there was still something there. And look, actually, an interesting stat. Actually, Derry only conceded 5 frees all night. I don't know, was the referee on Derry's side last night? Maybe, look at those stats, but maybe there's an argument there that Derry were more controlled than the tackle, and epitomised by Mike Fitzsimon sending off near the end of the game as well. For the second yellow, he could have got sent off earlier. So, there's that element of the game too. So, look at the stats, even scores from play, being ahead at half time. Dublin should have had this wrapped, and even the Kieran Kilkenny goal chance. Dublin will be cursing their luck coming out of that game.
Yeah, Oren says here, Garrett McKinless coming in was the turning point in the match for Derry. His intensity is essential for Derry's success. And yeah, like, it probably wasn't really until that Noel Toner goal that the momentum really shifted. I always felt like Dublin were quite comfortable up until that moment. And yeah, like, I think, like, from looking on, like, I'll have to rewatch the game, but it just felt like Dublin looked very leggy as well and very tired. And we just sort of, Derry just, in terms of strength and conditioning, just looked that bit further ahead. John says here, to be honest, Dublin blew the game versus Derry. Looking at the level Dublin are at, they'd struggle in Division 1. I think so as well. Like, I think if Dublin were in Division 1 this year, I think it would probably be almost exact same as what we've seen last year. And you could actually argue the case that the levels have even dropped even further when you look at some of the teams we've been playing in Clare and everything else that we've struggled to beat. Like, you look at Cork, who comfortably dispatched Clare today, whereas Dublin struggled, you know, and that's kind of the levels we're at, really. From speaking to a few Dublin fans I know who were at the game, there seems to be a general consensus maybe that it is now the time for change in management, and maybe Dessie Farrell's race has been ran. Like I've said multiple times, I think he's a Dublin legend for what he's achieved as a player, as a manager. But you do look at it from last year, 2021, and this year, you know, come the end of the year, I do think maybe a change is in order, because I don't really think it's, in terms of Dublin competing for All Irelands, we seem to be a mile off. And realistically, a county like us, considering what we achieved a couple of years ago, we should be at least competing. And it does feel like we're a good bit off that this year.
It does, yeah. And I just wonder, did Pat Gilroy coming into the back routine, like, press panic stations a small bit? Like, we talked about Dublin's defensive systems over the last few weeks, and even the match against Clare last week, where they had 15 men behind the ball. And Pat Gilroy was synonymous for that in the early 2010s, these defensive tactics. And I wonder, does that unsettle the Dublin players a small bit? Looking at them on the pitch, I don't know what was wrong there. But look at the first half. It was just polar opposites. The first half, Dublin were so flawless. They were brilliant. Like, when you look at Brian Fenton in the middle of the field, Cormac Costello was kicking the lights out. They had good shooting accuracy. They were brilliant. And the old Dublin was nearly back. But it just seemed to be a few short tweets from Derry. The decibel of the crowd went up. The goal went in. And suddenly Dublin folded. I don't know what it was really, but about the Kieran Kilkenny chance, Aaron, do you think he made the right choice at the time? Or do you think, looking back at it, he should have gone for goal?
No. And I think Rommel is a good commentator. He says Dublin seem very cautious, which is baffling given the quality they have in their starting team. Too much handball, nowhere near direct enough compared to the 2015-2020 juggernaut. And it was even something I said in the match reaction, like that killer instinct from Dublin seems to be gone. There was another instance as well, and I'm not too sure who it was running through. It might have been Lee Gannon who had a chance, and he just popped it over the bar. And you can understand that sometimes to a certain extent, but I've always said, like, if you have a clear one-on-one chance as a goal, you should go for the goal. You know what I mean? Like, just go for it. Unless you're it's one of those very cagey games like you see in Ulster sometimes, where it's 10 points to 9, and you're in that scenario where you can't really risk it. But I just think you should go for it. I think it's, there's enough space there in the net, in my opinion, to at least go for it, at least try create something of it. It puts pressure on the opposition and gives the goalkeeper something to do as well. And as you said, yeah, like Kilkenny running through, Costello's there over on his left-hand side. And you've seen Costello even as well. Like, he looks so furious afterwards. And yeah, I don't know what it is. It's a strange thing, because you think back to a couple of years ago, we never did that at all. We were always very, you think of the All-Ireland final versus Mayo in 2020, in the opening couple of seconds, where we scored a goal, what would have been very similar to something that Kilkenny would have done to Costello. So you're looking at it and thinking, yeah, has that killer instinct been coached out of Dublin? That's the way it looks to me.
And I think they've only scored 2 goals in the Alliance League campaign as well, which definitely epitomises the point. Double checking now, I think they've scored 2 goals, 3 goals in the league campaign. Like, that's not, and 2 of them was Brian Fenton. Yeah. Who, to be honest, like, Brian Fenton seems to be the only guy with a bit of killer instinct in that team. And he's actually, Brian Fenton's your only goal scorer from play in the whole league this season. Yeah. That probably just shows the point. Is, I don't know, the killer, like, I go back to Dublin with the days of Bernard Brogan, for example, even back to 2010, with the game against Cork in the first few minutes. Bernard Brogan gets the first chance back in the net. I remember a game against Fermanagh specifically as well. First chance for Brogan back in the net. There doesn't seem to be that same killer instinct with Dublin at the moment. Like, the Kilkenny chance, to be honest, it kind of, looking at it from a neutral point of view, it irks you. And I'd imagine it irk even more from a Dublin fan's point of view, because you're thinking, go for the net. Kill the game off. Like, it's ridiculous the way, like, you look at Derry last night, they were always going for the goal. Like, Derry could have got a goal in the first few minutes, actually. Brilliant save by David Hanlon again. Like, yeah. That's the point that we're saying about Dublin. If they carry on this trend against the likes of Mayo, who are performing excellent at the moment, against Galway, against Monaghan even, who are looking pretty good, Dublin will struggle because they just don't have a killer instinct in front of goal. I don't know what it is about Dublin, like, other than Fenton. Like, it seems to be non-existent. I don't know what it is. Like, it's not just goals or anything. They didn't even have goal. They had goal chances, but they pop them over the bar. Like Kilkenny last night, league, and I think there was another one. I think there was one in the first few minutes. James McCarthy had a chance. Like James McCarthy in the past would have rocketed that into the back of the net, but it seemed to be a team shot. It was well defended by the Derry player in the end, but like you would have expected more from James McCarthy in that position as well. So that's a worrying aspect for Dublin. Look at statistically, and look at it just out of your two eyes as well. It's baffling in many ways.
Yeah, like, and I seen even Conor McKenna tweeted earlier as well, saying Dublin have lost 7 games since the start of 2022. Like, and that really puts it into perspective. Like, when you really look at it, like, and when you actually look at it, since the All Ireland win in 2020, I thought we looked all right in that sort of COVID league, that COVID mini league. I thought we looked well enough there. But since the championship in 2021, like aside from the Leinster Championship last year, I think we've looked fairly, poor for the majority of the league, and that's why it has been quite baffling. A few comments coming in here. John says Dublin need a new face at the helm. Hard thing to say, as he is a legend for Dublin. And Tom says things aren't going to go good for Dessie, all right, but the players aren't helping much matters either. And Oren says Derry's bench was massive in the past. That was Dublin's biggest strength. And John says there was a lack of cohesiveness and indecision by Dublin players. Defence, half-back line have been dodgy in games so far. And yeah, that's the thing. I mean, with with Dublin, like you actually look at it as well, and you think of how we've been setting up defensively, but yet we've conceded 5 goals in our last 4 games, and that's very worrying. We conceded 2 against Cork, 1 against Clare, 1 against Limerick, and 1 against Derry, and probably should have conceded 1 against Kildare as well. I thought we got out of jail with that chance to hit the post. So yeah, it's not looking too good as a Dublin fan at the minute. Things could turn around by the time the championship comes around.